Hi, thanks for joining me once again. Before we get started with the next chapter, let's review the previous chapter. In this chapter, Father Jay explains how he had a very profound experience while meditating in a pyramid some friends had built. What he describes is what is known as a Kundalini awakening, which is what a lot of people who meditate are striving for, but is actually quite difficult to achieve. He goes into detail about awakening the spiritual centers within the body. I found it especially interesting when he explains where the caduceus that is used in the medical profession originally came from. In ancient times, healing also included meditation. But, as he explains, when modern medicine started developing pills for your ills, then meditation was no longer important in the medical field. It literally disappeared from Western medicine and was replaced by medication. But with that said, I am encouraged by how spiritual practices, particularly in the Western world, are seeing a renewal in popularity. There is so much more information in that chapter that I'm not going to cover in this recap, so I suggest you go back and listen to it to get all the details. And now let's see what's going on in this chapter of Father Jay's second book. Chapter 20, Silence, the Door to the Higher Mind. Love cannot be far behind a grateful heart and a thankful mind. These are the true conditions for your homecoming. A Course in Miracles. The ideal meditation brings the mind to silence. I wish to emphasize that the silent mind is the most powerful mind in the universe. I am not exaggerating. To be silent to the distractions around you, to put aside your conscious mind or ego, quieting it from trying to control your whole thinking process, gives the inner mind strength. Silence does not mean a blank mind, an empty mind, a dull mind. Quite the contrary. The silent mind is fully alert, fully alive, and completely ready, wide open to truth, to creativity, and to divine action. If your ego consciousness is doing all the talking, the divine mind will not be heard. There is too much noise. In the quietness of one's being, the true self, created in the image and likeness of God, corresponds to your level of acceptance, willingness, openness, and enthusiasm. A higher level of awareness may be yours with accompanying knowledge and understanding and spiritual enlightenment. Nevertheless, you cannot make it happen. If you do, you have an overactive ego, taking you on a false high to get you excited about your phenomenal growth. But it is false and unreal. How can you tell the difference? By their fruits you shall know them, as Jesus reminds us. If a person claims to have reached the level of the highest chakra and is filled with illumination and divine love, but remains a self-centered, angry individual, such a person is not really there, or even close. The ego was playing games. But if there were a radical change in the disposition and behavior of the person who claimed enlightenment and demonstrated it in daily living, with love and forgiveness, perhaps that fortunate person did reach the mountaintop and truly experienced the oneness of all things. Infinite silence contains infinite dynamism. In this silent knowledge is a computing system that is far more precise and far more accurate and far more powerful than anything that is contained in the boundaries of rational thought. Deepak Chopra. At any rate, we are not talking about a one-time experience. Meditation is an ongoing communication with our interior life and with God. One's whole day can be a prayer, moving from one fully awakened moment to another. I know it sounds like a cliché to talk about observing for the first time a sunset, like no other sunset, in which a person is excited for several long days, or it may be the observance of a flower, or a smile on a child's face. These I know, are typical examples of raising one's awareness, but I am referring to that particular moment, like no other moment ever before, in which such inexpressible beauty reminds us of the beauty and grandeur of God. It may be a once-in-a-lifetime gift from above. The flowers or objects of beauty don't change. We do. It is that rare occasion when the observer and the observed become one, with no separation. In fact, in that precious moment, that holy instant, to use an expression from ACIM, you sensed yourself being one with all things, not just the flower or the sunset. Believe me, this does not happen often. I recall in 1971, on one of the early days of spring, I was returning to St. Bernadette Parish from the bank. Something urged me to go back another way, a longer way. As I was driving through Hines Park, with beautiful trees everywhere, I suddenly stopped and parked the car. I would not be able to explain why I parked in that particular spot if someone asked me. I got out of my car and walked toward a single tree. I did something there that was most peculiar. I hugged a tree. I loved that tree. It was fully alive, and so was I. We were one. I then stood on a rock. It felt like it was an extension of me. Only when I got there did I notice a stream with running water. I moved over to the water and splashed myself in the face a few times. I was touching another part of me. I did not see the outward forms around me. I saw and felt their essence. It was the same as mine. There no longer was a world out there. I was the world, and the world was I, all extensions of the great power of God. And yes, I once again felt that inexpressible closeness to God. I began to see nature from another viewpoint. Having such an unforgettable experience of oneness through nature also happened on other rare occasions. As I said, these peak moments of enlightenment, as with meditation in a sitting position, do not happen often. But if you are consistently open, this form of meditation brings illumination more and more frequently. Most often what happens occurs as a total surprise. I used to teach the Silva method when I was at Most Holy Trinity Church. Every few months I would have a guest speaker come in and address my graduates, pertinent to some topic in the mind development course, i.e., dreams, pain, or the body-mind connection, etc. Frankly, I do not remember the topic of that particular lecture, but I do remember something that happened which I shall never forget. There were about 125 persons in the lecture room, actually the school cafeteria. I stood in the back near the entrance. I was listening to the lecture when suddenly I was no longer listening to what was being said. My conscious mind was totally silent. I looked at the people sitting there. They no longer appeared separate, each one in their own space. They were spirits listening. They all appeared alike and with a bright whitish aura, and each one blended into the ones around them. There were no males or female listeners. They were not separate. Well, it's hard to explain what I saw. They were indeed individuals, but at the same time, they were all one also. I kept staring and got very excited. I had heard about such things being possible, but I never thought I would see this rare occurrence with my own eyes. I looked at my own hands and legs. It was the same essence, with no distinction between them and myself. In the next moment, there was an even greater surprise. I felt oneness with everything, even the blackboard in the room and the building itself. Yes, everything. I said to myself once again, so that's what my divine guide meant when he said so many times, all is one. I was grateful to the Lord for giving me this experience. This unexpected experience that belongs to the highest awareness within us, this grandest view imaginable, lasted about 5 minutes. It seemed like it was forever, and I wished it was. Like I said, those experiences don't happen often, but they do happen and are more likely to be seen by a mind that is pure and simple, unless you become as a little child, or to a mind that has learned through meditation to expect the unexpected. I try to remain open and ready to receive at all times. There is only one problem. neither you nor I can make an authentic spiritual experience take place. It isn't within our domain of power. People have told me that they reach a very high level of spiritual excitement when they see Touched by an Angel on television. I have watched that program when I am able to, and yes, it can bring a person to silence when you see two people join together where there was hatred, division, and separation before. Their reunion, their reconciliation, their oneness at the end of the story can leave the viewer somewhat teary-eyed. But more than that, certain feelings emerge that were repressed, raising one's awareness, even if it is only for a precious moment. According to ACIM, where there was enmity between two persons and they are joined as one, the place where they stand is holy ground. One way to have thoughts of oneness is through movies, stories, and in general, the lives and experiences of others. This does not take place of meditation or observing the world around you. There is much to learn from television, but it is not your world. I hope it is not. Granted, God can open your eyes through any medium, a television set, the ocean, a child, soft rain, and so forth. And it's wonderful. However, don't give up the effort of uniting yourself to God through prayer and meditation, daily if possible. I have made a deep study of meditation. I have read many authors. The book that appeals most to me is The New Seeds of Contemplation by Thomas Merton, a Trappist monk who died in the early 60s. In another part of this book, I speak about his visitation to me at about 4 a.m. when he encouraged me to read his books. This book I keep reading from time to time. It sums up what I need to know about infused contemplation or mysticism. I believe he truly experienced the above because he speaks with clarity and authenticity about what contemplation is and what it is not. Contemplation, in the sense that it is explained in his book, refers to the highest, most profound experience of enlightenment or oneness with God, while still on the earth plane. In theological terms, there is the purgative, illuminative, or unitive way of relating to God. I believe Merton's view of contemplation is the unitive way, which by far is the highest awareness of the three. First, what contemplation is not. It is not philosophical. It is not a static awareness of spiritual things that are never changing. It is not a contemplation of abstract ideas. Contemplation cannot be objectively or scientifically analyzed. It cannot be put into words exactly or reasoned out. There is no definition for the contemplative experience because, in an attempt to define it, one has to proceed psychologically, and there does not exist an adequate psychology of contemplation. To describe one's reactions and feelings is to place contemplation where it is not to be found, in the superficial consciousness where it can be observed by reflection. The conscious mind is part of the external self which dies and is cast aside, like a soiled garment, in the genuine awakening of the contemplative. Contemplation is not and cannot be a function of the external self. When we use the superficial I, we are not referring to our real self. For example, to say, I need a drink or I feel sick, we are speaking as the ego, which can be studied or analyzed. The I that works in the world, thinks about itself, observes its own reaction, and talks about itself is not the true self that was created in the image and likeness of God. The ego is, at best, merely the vesture, the mask, the disguise of that mysterious and unknown divine image within us, whom most of us never discover until our life here is ended. Our external self or ego is not eternal nor spiritual, far from it. This ego self is doomed to disappear as completely as smoke from a chimney. Contemplation is not just an affair of a passive or quiet temperament, nor is it a tendency to inactivity or psychic peace. One who experiences contemplation is not merely a person who likes to sit and think. Still less a person who sits around with a vacant stare. Having a thoughtful and reflective disposition is certainly beneficial in this world of confusion and may very well dispose a person for contemplation, but that is not it. Contemplation is not prayerfulness or a tendency to find peace and satisfaction in liturgical rites. These, too, are a great good, and they are almost necessary preparations for the contemplative experience. But they can never, of themselves, constitute the experience. A person with a quiet temperament may become a contemplative, but temperament has nothing to do with contemplation and can even be an obstacle to the inner struggle and crisis through which one comes to a deeper spiritual awakening. It is possible, according to Merton, for an active and passionate person to awaken to contemplation, but not likely. Such people, being given to imagination, passion, and active conquest, exhaust themselves in trying to attain contemplation as if it were some kind of object, like a treasure or a political office or a professorship or becoming president of a company. Contemplation can never be an object of calculated ambition or something we plan to obtain with our practical knowledge and techniques. It is not we who choose to awaken ourselves, but God who chooses to awaken us. Contemplation is not trance or ecstasy, nor the hearing of unutterable words, nor the imagination of lights. It is not the emotional fire and aptness that comes with religious exaltation. It is not enthusiasm or the sense of being seized by an elemental force and swept into liberation by mystical frenzy. All of these things may seem to be a contemplative awakening, since one's ordinary awareness and control are suspended and may be accompanied by a religious experience, but they are not the work of the higher self guided by the Holy Spirit. Nor is contemplation the gift of prophecy or tongues, nor does it imply the psychic ability to read the secrets of people's lives. Sometimes true contemplation is accompanied by them, but they are not essential to it. For instance, the experience of being seized and taken out of oneself by collective enthusiasm in the self-righteous upsurge of party loyalty or ecstatic enthusiasm generated by a powerful politician or rock concert. These are real highs, but not in the same category as contemplation, nor is an escape from conflict, from anguish, or from doubt. By Thomas Merton. Hence, it is clear that genuine contemplation is incompatible with complacency and with smug acceptance of prejudicial opinion. It is not mere passive approval of the status quo, as some would like to believe, since this would reduce it to the level of spiritual anesthesia. And it is not a painkiller. Lastly, contemplation is not something we can attain alone, by our own intellectual effort, by perfecting our natural powers, nor by self-hypnosis. All of the above is what contemplation is not. If you will walk with me in patience, we will review what infused contemplation is. You may be wondering, what's left? The experience of true contemplation occurs like a holocaust in the steady burning to ash of old worn-out words, cliches, slogans, and rationalizations. Even some apparently holy concepts are consumed with all the rest. It is a terrible breaking and burning of idols and a purification of the sanctuary so that no graven things may occupy the place that God has commanded to be left empty, the center of our being, the sacred altar within us, wherein dwells the Holy Spirit. Contemplation is the expression of a person's intellectual and spiritual life. It is that life itself, fully awake, fully active, and fully aware that it is alive. It is a spiritual wonder and a spontaneous awe at the sacredness of life. It is gratitude for life and for awareness. Contemplation is a vivid realization that all life in us proceeds from an invisible, transcendent, and infinitely abundant source. In fact, contemplation knows the source, with a certainty that goes beyond reason and beyond simple faith. Actually, reason and faith reach out by their very nature to contemplation, for without it, they would be incomplete. Yet we can say that contemplation is not vision because it sees without seeing and knows without knowing. Knowledge and faith, nurtured by contemplation, are so profound that they are too deep to be grasped in images, in words, or even in clear concepts. In contemplation, one knows beyond all knowing. Although poetry, music, and art have something in common with it, contemplative experience is beyond aesthetic intuition, beyond art, beyond poetry, beyond philosophy, beyond speculative theology. In a sense, it fulfills all of them and then passes by them like the speed of light, as if they didn't exist. Contemplation is always beyond our own knowledge, beyond our understanding, beyond our own belief system, beyond explanation, beyond dialogue, and yes, beyond our own self. You might say that to enter into the realm of contemplation, one must, in a certain sense, die. Yes, dying to oneself prepares us to entrance into another dimension, a higher consciousness, a higher life. In this death, for the sake of life, which leaves behind all that we can know or treasure as life, as thought, as experience, as joy, as being. St. Thomas Aquinas wrote the most eloquent volumes of theology and philosophy. They are considered a masterpiece and have been the basis of the theology and philosophy in the West for the last 700 years. Yet, near the end of his life, he considered his magnificent work as mere straw to be burned, compared to the reality of his mystical experience with God. In his estimation, what he wrote sadly paled in the presence of divine truth. Again, contemplation is compatible with all of the above and is their highest fulfillment. But at a certain point, all other experiences are momentarily lost. They die that we may be born anew. Contemplation reaches out to the transcendent and inexpressible God, who is absolute reality and the source of all that is real. Unfortunately, most of what we know on our own is illusion. Contemplation is a response to a call by one who speaks to the depths of our own being. In response, the contemplative echoes the Creator with a deep cosmic resonance in the innermost center of his or her being. God actually answers himself in us, and this answer is divine life, divine creativity, making all things new. We ourselves become his echo and his answer. It is as if in creating us, God asked a question, and in awakening us to contemplation, he answered the question. And all is summed up in one awareness, not a proposition, but an experience. I am. This religious and transcendent contemplation is truly a gift. St. Paul once again offers this insight. The Spirit himself gives testimony to our own spirit that we are sons and daughters of God. Contemplation is more than a consideration of abstract truths about God, even more than effective meditation on the things we believe. It is the awakening, the enlightenment, and the amazing intuitive grasp by which love gains certitude of God's creative and dynamic intervention in our daily life. Contemplation does not simply discover or find a clear idea of God, or confine him within our limits of that idea and hold him there like a prisoner. It is quite the contrary. The person in pure contemplation is literally carried away by God into his own realm, his own mystery, and his own freedom. Obviously, if you have ever experienced contemplation, it would be absolutely unforgettable. Most people meditating will be located somewhere between the simplest forms of meditation and the ultimate experience of contemplation. If there is a sincere effort, all levels of meditation are beneficial, wholesome, and acceptable. It is not necessary that everyone be able to achieve the dimension of contemplation as explained above. And that is all right. I'm simply offering the highest forms of meditation that I am personally aware of, and therefore am able to share these with you. There may be more profound levels of meditation that are beyond my knowledge, but I would prefer not to share experiences that are spiritually beyond my present capacity. Believe me, it is not arrogance. It is just the opposite. I still have not figured out why God has favored me with such experiences, but I feel impelled to share them with those who are ready for the next step or to dialogue with those who have already been there. More than anything, I am completely humbled by these experiences, and my life has never been the same. I encourage you to continue seeking an intimate communication with God. At some point in your quest, your infinitely loving parent will take you well beyond the limitations of your conscious mind. The greatest powers given to a human being are the invisible, creative forces hidden within us. They await your pursuit, to be awakened by the divine power who put them there. Whenever you feel or believe that you are powerless, read the words of Psalm 8, 3-6, paraphrased to make them inclusive. It should lift your spirits. Lord, when I look at the sky which you have made, at the moon and the stars which you set in their places, what are we that you think of us, mere men and women, that you care for us? Yet you made us inferior only to yourself. You crowned us with glory and honor. You appointed us rulers over everything you made. You placed us over all creation. Thank you for listening, and please join us every Sunday for our watch party at our new premiere time of 2:30 Pacific Time as I premiere the next chapters of Father Jay's book.